Criminality in the banking sector has been going on since the dawn of banking itself, and it has multiplied since 1913 with the introduction of the Federal Reserve, and when central banking really began to take hold of the financial institutions. And then in more recent years, we have had the introduction of derivatives, increasing the amount and power that the financial institutions have over the global economy. And today we will discuss HSBC caught in the biggest banking leak in history. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. I have this brand new information hot off the presses. Let's cover it right here and connect the dots. This is out of The Guardian. The US government will come under intense pressure this week to explain what action it took after receiving a massive cache of leaked data that revealed the Swiss banking arm of HSBC helped wealthy customers conceal billions of dollars of assets. Now, was it concealing the assets of you and I? Of course not. It is always the elite and the wealthy who are allowed to have these tax loopholes, and they're actually advising them on how to do so. The leaked files, which reveal how HSBC advised some clients on how to circumvent domestic tax authorities, were obtained through an international collaboration of news outlets. So we can read on in this, but it will take some time. Very, very good information here that I believe that you should read into further if you haven't already. So let's cover a couple of the points and just get into it very quickly. Routinely allowed clients to withdraw bricks of cash, often in foreign currencies of little use in Switzerland. So that's one point right there. They aggressively marketed schemes likely to enable wealthy clients to avoid European taxes. So they're actually aiding and abetting in this right here. Now, you may have an opinion on what this is, but the fact remains is that the little guy doesn't ever get any of these advantages. It's always the wealthiest people that have all of these advantages. This one is interesting too. Colluded with some clients to conceal undeclared, quote, black accounts from their domestic tax authorities. This is an advantage that you and I simply don't have. And the big news, provided accounts to international criminals, corrupt businessmen, and other high-risk individuals. And this shows you the collusion in between the wealthy people and the government and how they're able to continue on with their process and their schemes over and over again, way beyond the financial crisis. And this is all going to show you how much power they have over the government. The HSBC files cover the period of 2005 to 2007, amounted to the biggest leak in history, shedding light on 30,000 accounts, 120 billion in assets. Now, this is huge news. So who are the kind of individuals who are allowing and are able to take advantage of tax loopholes in general? Well, one of these gentlemen here is Warren Buffett. Everyone loves Warren Buffett, and this is out of the Financial Times. Warren Buffett faces pressure for more disclosure. He's under fire from investment analysts who cover his $370 billion company, Berkshire Hathaway, over the quality of its financial disclosures. See, you and I have to file our taxes at the end of the year, and if you're missing $1 on there, then they come at you with all of the force of the law. But if you are Warren Buffett, in fact, you have bailouts coming your way. While Berkshire has grown to be the third largest company in the U.S. stock market, its quarterly filings reveal far less detail than companies of a similar size. And they urged Buffett to consider expanding disclosures, particularly about their large insurance businesses. See, that's the way it goes. It's essentially just, please, Mr. Buffett, do you mind giving us more information? We don't want to bother you. We don't want to ask you for it or demand that you do so. Just if you wouldn't mind, just hand over some of that more information and disclose your findings, please. Do you mind? Thank you. And this is the kind of behavior that allows them to continue on with this. Now, see, it's not Warren Buffett or the recipient of a mega billion-dollar bailout through one of his subsidiary companies, but of course it will be the individual who makes $125,000 or more a year that gets taxed heavily. See, they lobby for the taxes and they call it on the wealthy, but of course these are not necessarily the most wealthiest people. They're simply in the upper middle class. They are the ones who often buy big ticket items. They are the ones who have the small businesses who can afford to have employees that essentially get the economy moving. But instead, money goes to Warren Buffett, and then he shuts down the Keystone pipeline and in order to basically have his business of the rail continue. New York Fed data confirm a revolving door with the banks, and that's why this is allowed to happen. I was talking about that at the beginning with this HSBC scandal that's going on. A revolving door between the U.S. regulators and banks emphatically exists, according to new statistics published by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, and they criticized and attracted criticism, alleged coziness to Goldman Sachs. And that's exactly what happens over and over. They are going back and forth. And right here, the paper published under the New York Fed's website concludes that the banking regulators move into the private sector when the economy is booming, and straitened times result in more former bankers joining the regulatory agencies. Restricting hiring by either banks or regulators, however, could result in poor retention of quality staff. So this is exactly what has been happening for some time. I've been covering this over and over. You do have a revolving door because it allows for it. And then you have the lobbyists, which simply really add fuel to the fire, and they are lobbying is just essentially bribing, and that's how it is allowed to take place. This is the kind of deals that occur that are the reason we have such a problem. I'm going to move on quickly here. As Greece's financial condition has worsened, undermining their euro, the role of Goldman Sachs and other major banks is masking the true extent of the country's problems, has drawn criticism from euro leaders. So what we have is a situation where individual companies are profiting from the losses that are taking place, particularly in the euro. But even before that issue became apparent, a little-known company backed by JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs and about a dozen other banks created an index that enabled market players to bet on whether Greece and other European nations would go bust. So they have these things called credit default swaps. I've been mentioning it over and over again. This is where the article where you can read about it. But essentially, these credit default swaps allow them to bet on the fact that the Greece will fall. And that's exactly what Goldman Sachs did, and other companies did, of course, as well. I'll just highlight Goldman Sachs because of the issue that we're talking about today in this video. So they actually were creating these tools that enabled them to profit if Greece fell. And of course, they have their people in the banking sector in Greece allowing this kind of deal to go through. They are simply victims of the banking industry and all of their criminality that is taking place. If you don't see that, you need to understand credit default swaps and other types of derivatives that go on. People are asking, well, you know what? There is no real collateral in a collateralized debt obligation when you're talking about credit cards. But of course, that's just the way it works. It doesn't matter because it's all digital zeros and ones. They're able to manipulate it and multiply it by several times until you lose track of that initial derivative. I mean, they're gambling on the most unusual things like the weather, and they're able to not only do this just with play money. We're talking billions of dollars here that is being gambled away. So then we move ahead into present day. The former head of the U.S. Central Bank, Alan Greenspan, has predicted that Greece will have to leave the Eurozone. And the new government here is saying that they do not want to leave the Eurozone. They want to stay put. So this is very interesting to see what he says. He told the BBC he could not see who would be willing to put up more loans to bolster Greece's struggling economy. That's very interesting. We did see on some level that Russia is sticking out their hand to them, but will they want to give enough in order to keep them going? This will be something that we'll have to see as it unfolds. Greece wants to renegotiate its bailout, but Mr. Greenspan said, I don't think it will be resolved without Greece leaving the Eurozone. I do believe, however, that there will be some short-term pain here regardless if Greece does leave the Eurozone or not. I do think that many of these countries should leave the Eurozone. I'm definitely not in favor of it overall, simply because it puts control into the hands of the technocrats. These mega corporations that they work for, and they are within that revolving door, are making the laws in these countries. And then you have something like the Troika, which sits over top of them, really deciding the laws of that particular country. I think we can have strong governments in place if we make them in sort of a limited frame and limited scope, and not allow them to dictate each and every policy that is taking place on the individuals and removing their rights. We have the smart meters that are taking place right now. We have capital controls that are being insisted upon these people. It is something that really we need to look at and understand, that the more control you give to a higher power, the worse things are. And that's what's happening right now. We're seeing this taking place, and we need less of this control by technocratic elite. That's for sure. So to get back into this issue of the credit default swaps, in my book right here, I'm talking about mortgage-backed securities and the CDOs as well, MBS and CDOs. As in all other bubbles, a bunch of new instruments were created, but MBS and CDOs will get the spotlight here. A CDO is an incredibly ridiculous concept which should have never caught steam, but unfortunately has. And essentially they take all of this garbage, the worst of the worst possible debt that they can find, and they grab it and they put it inside of one package, wrap it up into a nice little present for those who want to invest in it. But of course, it doesn't sound very good when you're talking about the worst of the worst. You're going to have to rate it at a very low level. But all you need to do is use that revolving door, get your friends in the rating agencies to rate it at a AAA, and then put it out on the market, and the investment companies will buy it up every last penny. That's exactly what happened. And when it all comes crashing down, you have a nation like Greece suffering. Okay, the last thing right here, and this is the Gallup CEO. And it said, I may suddenly disappear for telling the truth. Pardon me while I move this around here. Telling the truth about the Obama unemployment rate. And he said that specifically. You can read the quote further down in the article right here. This is what happens when you try to go against this government. They will do anything they can. And I just wanted to add one last thing to the end of this. It's not necessarily directly related, but I had to fit it in this video. And this is out of Bloomberg. Saudi Arabia, the world's largest crude exporter, cut pricing for March oil sales to Asia, a sign that the Desert Kingdom is continuing to fight for market share. Saudi Arabia is the key to this oil price right now. We need to follow each and every one of their moves that they are doing right now. This is huge, I believe. And they said this is further evidence that they are hell-bent on protecting their market share in China. Remember that China is obviously a growing nation. They are using more and more energy as time goes on. So of course they need to partner up with those that are providing them with the resources. And Saudi Arabia is a big exporter of oil to China. So this is something to pay attention to. I'll leave it right there because it's not directly related, but just wanted to bring that to you guys. And of course, this information is coming to you right hot off the presses. I am putting this video out in the middle of the night, essentially right here in the Eastern time zone, but I had to get it out to you guys. I hope you appreciate that. And of course, give me a thumbs up if you do, if you like this information. I'm still working hard on the website. It's all behind the scenes, but as soon as it's all done, I will bring that out to you. There's going to be so much more information for you to read upon, to get there. And of course, if you want the best intel, it's always at the insiders. Remember that if you're emailing me on my normal email address, which is david@themoneygps.com, it's going to take me about a week to get back to you. That's seems to be the lag time between all the emails I'm trying to reply, but I always do so at the insiders first. So if you don't even want the emails themselves, you can just email me directly at the insiders just to get a hold of me sooner. But if you do want that information, it is available at themoneygps.com. You just scroll down to the bottom, fill in your email address, and you get occasional emails from me with good, short, concise info.